Hi class, this is group 12 and we are working on case study 12, which is Pensacola Surgery Center in Florida. Gary is the CFO of Pensacola Surgery Center. Right after starting there, Gary discovers he has a cash account of $100,000. This is double his target balance of $50,000. So Gary wants to invest this excess in one of several ways. A low risk investment such as money market mutual funds or a CD. CDs are good because they're very flexible and you can choose the time of the CD ranging from 6 months to 10 years. Another issue facing Gary is that the company recently bought a new hardware software system to handle its patient billing. And this needs to be replaced with a more sophisticated one in about 5 years. Future cost estimates $200,000 will be needed. To pay for the new system, Gary is planning to either deposit a lump sum today in an interest-bearing account or to make annual payments into the same account. Pensacola also has some extra space available that they could lease out to somebody for a 5-year period. But a downside is that the space would need some renovation first, and these costs would add up to about $40,000. All of these issues facing Gary involve time. Now, questions 1A and 1B. Consider the $50,000 excess cash. Assume that Gary invests the funds into a 1-year CD. Part A asks, what is the CD's value at maturity, the future value, if it pays 10%? B asks, what's the future value if the CD pays 5%? What about 15%? You can see here the calculations that we came up with for the answers for 1A and the two parts to B. Now, questions 2A and 2B would like us to rework question 1 again, but this time placing the CDs at a 5-year maturity rather than the 1 year. You can see the more time, the more money. Question 3. Now consider the surgery center's goal of having $200,000 available in 5 years to buy a new patient billing system. Part A asks, what lump sum amount must be invested today into a CD paying 10% annual interest to accumulate to the needed $200,000? B asks, what annual interest rate is needed to produce $200,000 after 5 years if only $100,000 is invested? We've done our math here, and the lump sum to be invested would be $124,184.26. And B, the annual interest rate would be 14.87%. Now questions 4A and 4B. Consider a second alternative for accumulating funds to buy the new billing system. In lieu of a lump sum investment, assume that 5 annual payments of $32,000 are made at the end of each year. What type of annuity is this? This would be considered an ordinary annuity. An ordinary annuity is defined as a series of fixed payments made at the end of a specific accounting period over a specific period of time. For example, of an ordinary annuity would be straight bond coupon payments. And B asks, what is the present value of this annuity if the opportunity rate is 10% annually? What if it's 10% semi-annually? So we went ahead and answered questions 4A and 4B. A is an ordinary annuity, and here's the math we came up with for part B. Question 4 also has a C, D, and E. What is the future value of this annuity if the payments are invested into an account that pays 10% interest annually? What if it's 10% compounded semi-annually? What annual interest rate is required to accumulate the $200,000 needed to make the purchase, assuming a $32,000 annual payment? E asks, what size annual payment is needed to accumulate $200,000 under annual compounding at a 10% interest rate? So here you can see we've done the math for C, D, and E, and these are the numbers that we came up with these different variables that were asked. Questions 6A and 6C. Now let's think about an uneven cash flow stream streaming from the lease agreement given in the case. What is the present year, which is year 0, value of the annual lease cash flows if the opportunity cost rate is 10% annually? C asks, does the office renovation and subsequent lease agreement appear to be a good investment for the company? We believe it does. When making these calculations, there's a hint to compare the cost of the renovation with the present value of the lease payments and use a 10% discount rate for the analysis. So even though we have to do a renovation, our calculations show that we would be making a profit of a little over $7,000. The last question is question 7, and this is 5 years later. In this scenario, the company is unable to accumulate the $200,000 needed for the software purchase. Instead, it is forced to borrow the money. The loan calls for repayment in equal annual installments over a 4-year period, with the first payment due at the end of 1 year. Assuming that the company can borrow the funds at 10% rate, what amount of interest and principal would be repaid at the end of the year for the loan? So here we've done the math. We've broken it down into the 4 years, starting the first payment at the end of the first year, and the initial loan balance starts at $200,000, and to get it down to 0, and how much interest we'd be paying each year. So I hope our presentation answered the questions for you, and we look forward to seeing your comments, suggestions, and questions on the discussion board. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good day.